Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 154th program, apparently, on Glamour World Problem, and our 94th reading. I guess we're getting through this book pretty well, and some areas we have emphasized more than once. I would, there's some interesting things coming up here, and I would just like to welcome you. Annette and Catherine and Shuang Pham and Frederick and Jessica, Karen, Kim and Mariut, Martha and Martine, Rebecca, Risto, Stacia, Tia, and Winnie and Zenaidi. And over here on the other side, we have Joe and Michael helping with the communications and the questioning and your statements and so forth, and myself. And Tuya will be joining us shortly. Been a very short night here in Finland, but it sometimes happens, So, okay, we have been involved in 17 items, and we got as far as the 10th item the last time we were together. The 5 controlling rays, the governing of the relation between the dweller and the angel, and so forth, and the relationship of humanity to its own dweller. And so we have stated something that is pretty much in the mind of most Bailey students, that these 5 rays are very important. And then one day we'll be able to get into the sub-rays, and even the monadic ray will be of importance. So now, point 11. The rays which govern humanity and which condition humanity and the present world problems are. Now, this looks like the rays of the Piscean age. So this is not any individual. This is humanity as a whole. And sometimes there are, different ray formulas proposed. But in this case, the soul ray is proposed as the second for all of humanity. And the statement is made, humanity must express love. Okay. Now, the personality in this Piscean age, interestingly, the third ray. And so I think, well, usually it's possible also to consider the soul ray or the general ray of humanity as the fourth. There is a sense in which the fourth kingdom and the fourth creative hierarchy of monads, the so-called initiates, are ruled by the fourth ray. But in the long run, we need to develop the second ray of love wisdom. We have, it's hard to say, what the monadic ray of humanity will be. I think the power of destruction is very strong, and humanity progresses differently from the devas, inasmuch as humanity progresses by the liberation from the destroyed form, and the devas are building that form. It doesn't mean that the quality of building is missing in humanity entirely. It's not. The devas and humanity meet on the second ray. But the first ray is powerful in humanity through the destruction of the form and the liberation of the spirit from the destroyed form. Just as the causal body is destroyed and something rises out of it, and then the other vehicles, including the monadic vehicle, is destroyed. Always liberation through destruction of the form. And that has to count in the general ray qualities of humanity. But still, even though the fourth ray, which has so much ray 1 and ray 2 in it, interestingly enough, see, because you start looking at the rays of the attribute 4, 5, 6, 7, you see they are combinations of the rays of aspect. And my speculation is that humanity, the fourth ray of humanity, is a combination of the first ray and the second, and the fifth ray, a combination of the first and third rays, and the sixth ray of the second and third ray, and the seventh ray, a combination of equal measures of ray 1, 2, and 3. So you'll notice that if the personality ray of humanity is the third, or has been during the Piscean age, then a certain part of Pisces really is used in promoting selfish personality objectives, and that we have the same rays operative here as we would have in the planet itself. The same rays are operative as in our planet, a second ray soul and a third ray personality. And from another point of view, and generically considered, every human being is a combination, when looking at their soul and personality, generically, in general, of the second ray, which generically rules the soul, and the personality, the third ray, as the generic ruler. So there's been a lot of the development of intelligence in the Piscean age. It's the age, well, as Dane Rudyard used to say, you just don't have a stick with only one end. So it's the age of Pisces, Virgo. And while there has been a lot of second ray and sixth ray in Pisces and Virgo, because those are the two major rays coming through those two constellations and their signs, there's a sense in which the third ray is prominent in Virgo, because I am the mother and the child. The mother aspect is connected with the third ray of divinity. And then God and matter, matter is connected with the third ray, again, of divinity. So the builder of the foundation is really the third ray. And there is or has been a foundation built of intelligence, widespread intelligence during the Piscean era, and that has to be transmuted into love wisdom. And generally, what happens there is that Venus works upon the foundational intelligence and transmutes it into love and wisdom. Venus has both the love and the monastic aspect. Is wisdom older than love? Is love older than wisdom? Do they appear contemporaneously? It seems that, in a way, wisdom precedes love in its development, just the way the Buddha is slightly older. The Lord of Wisdom, the Buddha, is slightly older than the Christ and made his connection with the cosmic mental plane, whereas the Christ's amazing cosmic connection was with the cosmic astral plane. Now, further, I guess I'm saying that in the previous major solar system, Virgo was the last sign active. The first sign active was Cancer, and the intelligence developed under Virgo, and still you find in people who carry a lot of Virgo a lot of intelligence, even though it's meant to transition into Christ in you, the hope of glory. It's meant to transition that sign away from the third ray and away from service in a third ray solar system to service in a second ray solar system such as we have now. So the mental ray during the age of Pisces, how interesting. It's like a recapitulation of the higher possibilities in Atlantis when all of that brilliant mechanism was given to maybe an undeserving humanity. It's the fifth ray. And we can say that if we look back in history, it's been a long time since the fifth ray really featured prominently in the development of humanity. So the scientific achievement is there, and we might not suspect that humanity had a fifth ray mind during the age of Pisces, but this is what the Tibetan is saying. And basically what happened here is the Aryan race, the fifth subrace, developed, and the concrete mind developed tremendously. This doesn't mean that, from the planet Neptune and under that particular influence, there were not some towering mystics, for whom the approach was hardly the fifth ray. But in general, there's been the development of the concrete mind, especially since Sir Francis Bacon. What does it say of him? He rang the bell or sounded the bell, which called the wits together. So he was anticipating his role as the coming Mahachohan, and he insisted with his very powerful Aquarian fifth ray, he insisted on the scientific method, which was a relief from speculative scholasticism. The second and third ray, which had become so self-generating that the testimony of the senses was not even followed. The senses were considered to be of this world, basically evil, basically limiting, and all of the other philosophical work was considered to be the real thing. But Bacon came along and said, take a look at things. Look with your senses. Listen, touch, smell, taste. Find out what's really happening in front of you. So a keen dose of realism came in the Piscean Age from the time of Roger Bacon and especially Francis Bacon, the same entities. And in the closing of the Piscean Age, we've had a tremendous development of the fifth ray, almost, you might say, anticipating the fifth ray of Aquarius. The astral ray, well, no question there. During the Age of Pisces, the people who are highly idealistic and highly devoted, and our sixth ray souls basically had an opportunity to flourish. And if anything, this is what has to be calmed down at this moment, because people are getting carried away with their narrow idealism at the dangerous end of the Piscean Age through which we are passing right now. You know, longing for Armageddon, longing for the return of Christ in a very narrow way, longing to have their own particular narrow sixth ray religion triumph, especially the Abrahamic groups, Christianity and Islam, narrow Christianity and narrow Islam, not the wider versions of it. And here, so that sixth ray promoted by the sixth ray of Pisces has to be somewhat calmed. And in the more mental Aquarian age, it will be. And the physical ray, seventh ray, and the development of the large business conglomerates and corporations and that kind of thing, we have the development worldwide of mostly, unfortunately, the selfish, self-serving approach to business. We might, look for the third ray here too, but we're leaving the Piscean Age with the development of great organizations. Now, some of these rays are actually the rays of the Catholic Church. He gave us the rays of the Catholic Church. And he said they are the first ray soul, the Church of Rome, Rome the great ruler. The third ray personality, so we see it's the same here. The sixth ray mind, very rare. So it's not here. And, the Buddha had it, but on a much higher turn of the spiral. The astral body, the sixth, yes, for the Catholic Church, just as is seen here. And the physical ray, the ray of ritual, the seventh. So 3 of the 5 rays are the same rays as he gave for the Catholic Church. And he said that, at least at the time, that they would have to stop their devious and constant financial manipulation. Now, there have been many reform efforts and some very good things have happened, but you can see what the third ray personality can bring in terms of materialism. Anyway, we are trying to overcome that materialistic orientation. And the very first mantram connected with Pisces tells us to go forth into matter and indicates the materialism of the early Piscean expression. Sometimes we may think, oh, well, Pisces is so otherworldly, but in fact, the whale of materialism does swallow Jonah. And Jonah here is the man, the disciple, the soul, and he's swallowed up in this mass of materialistic enterprise. Now, so, having in mind humanity's rays for the Piscean age is orienting, historically orienting, and helps us understand the changes that have to occur. Now he goes on to say the soul ray controls for an entire life period. The personality rays given above are for the Piscean age, which is now beginning to pass out. So he seems to be hinting that, in fact, the soul ray will stay the same. With a strong dose of ray 4 and the objective of developing a ray 2. If you think about it, Earth and Jupiter are two planets which, well, let's say Jupiter rules in both Pisces exoterically, and it rules in Aquarius esoterically. And Jupiter has a second ray soul, just the way Earth has that second ray soul. You go looking for other planets that have the second ray soul, and it's hard to find. They have second ray components, but not the second ray soul. Earth and Jupiter are two. So Jupiter sets a good example. With Pisces, it's called pervasive wisdom, and with Aquarius, it's called universal love. You will note, he says, that the first ray of will, okay, wait, maybe I didn't finish reading that. The personality rays above, or given above, are for the Piscean age, not for the entire life period of humanity. And it's passing out. But these have definitely and irrevocably conditioned humanity. So every period when rays are strong tends to make its impress upon the human race and then qualify it for further progress. And we can see, interestingly, with the Age of Pisces, that intelligence really made its way. We sometimes we think about the age of faith and obedience, and that is true. The age of faith and obedience, yes. But intelligence, under the Virgo part, made its way forward much more than we may suspect. It's like a revisitation of old Atlantis. You will note also that the first ray of will or power is missing, as is the fourth ray of harmony through conflict. This fourth ray is always active, as it controls in a peculiar manner, he's not elaborating, the fourth creative hierarchy of human monads, the initiates as they are called, and might be regarded as forming the basic personality ray of the fourth creative hierarchy. So the ongoing ray, which because of our numerology we can never dispense with, this fourth ray abides with us, the basic personality ray. And sometimes I have thought that the soul ray of humanity too is affected thereby, but that the four changes into the two. Now, one of the things we have to realize is when we individualize, we have a choice only of rays 4, 5, 6, or 7 for the soul, and rays 4, 5, 6 or 7 for the personality. Both. And this is in the rays and the initiations. We cannot have rays 1, 2, or 3 in the beginning, either in the personality or in the soul. And any vision or assessment that tells us that we do have those rays basically is coming from astrology and not from the ray chart at all. So I wonder, maybe the same is true for humanity as a whole as is true of the human individual. That in fact, for a long time, humanity could only have rays. This is my speculation, okay? Rays 4, 5, 6, or 7 as the personality ray, ray 4, 5, 6, or 7 as the soul ray. But now what's happening? What's happening is that humanity is approaching the first initiation. And if this is true of the individual, that the individual who approaches the first initiation can now have a second ray soul, or maybe a second ray personality, probably if the soul ray is something else. Maybe that's true of humanity too. Humanity is now approaching the first initiation, and we might say, so the second ray soul for humanity becomes a possibility. You get my reasoning here? I'm just looking at an analogy. It might be so that because basically you can have a third ray soul sometime before the first initiation. The period of intelligence comes upon you, and a third ray soul is possible, but you cannot have a first or second ray soul except as the first initiation is approached, nor can you have a first or second ray personality until the first initiation is approached. And the big theme for us right now is humanity is approaching the first initiation. So the possibility of developing its second ray that humanity must love is really strongly with us. And maybe it is the transition from the fourth ray to the second. Maybe we are looking at a transition from the fourth ray to the second ray. I would say, it seems to me the likelihood is pretty great. Now, with the Aquarian Age, and it is rapidly coming, and really from the time there's a 500-year overlap period, and basically I think when Francis Bacon entered the picture, that overlap period began. The dweller, which is the personality we've been finding out, the dweller will present different rays. The fifth ray, well, first of all, the second ray, let's take a look at that. The second ray soul is not again mentioned because the longer cycle in which it prevails is still operative. So it's going to be the second ray soul. That's long period. What does it say here? The soul ray controls for an entire period of life. Is that a round? What period are we talking about when we say that? But still, for these little ages of about 2160 years, the soul ray is certainly prevailing. And, sometimes he says 2,500 years, then it's still a small cycle. So soul ray, let's say, is the same. Personality ray, however, and this is going to be a big difference from the Piscean to the Aquarian Age, is the fifth ray of truth, of accuracy, of careful research into the subtle energies which Uranus rules. Uranus as the main ruler of Aquarius, both exoterically and the highest veiled hierarchical ruler of Aquarius. So Uranus has a lot to do with the fifth ray. And Venus will bring in the age of brotherhood, scientific brotherhood, we might say. Scientific brotherhood will know that we are brothers and sisters. We'll know that for scientific reasons, because the soul itself will be proven in fifth ray France with its fifth soul ray, and the attitude of the human personality in general will not be so glamorous and manipulative and materialistic. We can say that the fifth ray is materialistic, but it also has been the ray that has delivered the death of materialism. The first ray and the fifth ray together, creating the nuclear chain reactions and the destruction of matter, or at least the destruction of the forms which matter takes in the atomic bomb and in other more harmless and helpful methods, is really coming out of the combination of the first and fifth ray. And it's a bit of a race, if I can say so, because the lords of materialism are also using the first and the fifth ray together, and the first and fifth ray characterizes their efforts to destroy humanity through a great explosion. DK talks about that if we live in an armed camp, there will be an explosion, and it will mean the end of humanity as we know it, and maybe the end of humanity, period, the end. So at the same time that the first and the fifth ray together will give us a tremendous labor-saving support and liberate us, so that so many more millions and millions can cultivate their inner nature and not be the slave to outer labor. At the same time, it's a dangerous combination of rays. So, we have to be careful during the Aquarian Age, because there will be discoveries concerning the properties of matter, which, if wrongly used, could be terminal for humanity. And that's why I think, pretty much from the year 1950 to the year 2000, in those 50 years approximately, the fifth ray ashram, which could have made tremendous progress in the discovery of the very basics of matter energy was assigned to as a subsidiary to the third ray, so that the research was not so fast. And the ashram then by itself received kind of a de-stimulation. And you can imagine that with all we've learned, if that is the product of being reduced in potency, what it would have been if the fifth ray ashram was allowed just to proceed as it had been proceeding and as it had created the atomic and hydrogen bombs and so forth. Now it seems to be working again, and there is a danger of, laser weaponry and weaponry we cannot even conceive undermining human progress. So we have to be watchful of this fifth ray. But in general, instead of glamorous manipulation for selfish purposes, there will be a real search for etheric, physical truth, we might say, and the structure of matter, and altogether a greater mental polarization on a higher level than was possible in the Piscean age. Still, two rays are the same. The astral ray, in this case, conditioning our incentives, what we desire, and hopefully a higher sixth ray, reaching for more ideal conditions that are achievable. And then, of course, the incoming ray. It was not incoming during the Piscean age. It did not accompany the Piscean cycle. It was the sixth ray that accompanied in its own cycle the Piscean cycle. But now we have the seventh ray accompanying the Aquarian cycle, and all things seventh ray are going to be advanced. Now, what's interesting here is that the mental ray becomes the fourth in the Aquarian age for humanity. And the fourth ray is the ray of intuition. It's the Buddhic plane, and on the fourth subplane, down or up on the Buddhic plane, intuition prevails. So four and intuition go together, and the intuition will serve the scientific purposes of really discovering the truth of things during the Aquarian age. We've had so much glamour, so much fabrication up to this time, so many wrong-headed assumptions about the other world and so forth. Now there's going to be research into survival, research into reincarnation, research into the constitution of man. His etheric nature will be revealed under this fifth ray personality. It's altogether a more level type of approach to reality, far less manipulative. We're not just manipulating things the way we want them to be. We're actually examining how are they really. It's kind of a continuation of the fifth ray mind of Pisces, which became stronger as the age went on, into a general attitude of the fifth ray. And although Leo at present is the sign that gives us more of the fifth ray than any other sign, it is soon to become Aquarius. So the factual, truthful nature of things and the discovery of what nature really is and what supernature is will be delivered to us during the Piscean age, and we'll be creative about it. The fourth ray, says the Tibetan, is the ray of creative living. So, that is one of the really important types of applications of creativity. And of course, DK speaks of the coming Renaissance, and we can be sure that technology on the fifth ray plays its inevitable role in the coming Renaissance, which, the statement is, will make the great cathedrals look like the building blocks of a child. So this is what to anticipate. This is what to anticipate as we move closer and closer to the beginning, real beginning of the Aquarian Age in the year 2117. Now let's see, we're not going to go on much more here. Let's see what this looks like. So we have basically the two sets of rays that rule humanity during the outgoing Piscean Age and the incoming Aquarian Age. In number 13 here, each great cycle in the zodiac is in the nature of an incarnation of the human family, and each great race is a somewhat similar happening. Now, a great race can last a long time. And what does he mean by a great cycle? Does he mean, he mean an equinoctial age, such as, 2,500 years or 2,160 years? Is that what he means? Or is he taking it to a great Platonic year? A root race lasts a long time, millions of years. So somehow incarnations are occurring for the human family, maybe lesser incarnations in that equinoctial age, maybe greater incarnations in the Platonic years. Now, we're just coming out of a 25,000 year Platonic year ruled by Pisces. And what the implications there are, we'll have to think that through. And we're just getting ready to enter a great Platonic year ruled by Aquarius, another 25,000 years. So he goes on and says, the latter is, however, of more importance. So he's basically saying, look, 10 million years for the sixth root race. And, probably that long or a little longer for the Atlantean race. The Aryan race seems shorter. It seems to be the sort of bottleneck in the hourglass, a shorter period. So the latter, meaning a great race, a root race, and I think I should put that down, root race, is more important where the human understanding and consciousness is concerned. The analogy is to the few important incarnations in the life of the soul, in contradistinction to the many unimportant and rapidly succeeding incarnations. Of the important incarnations, there are three, which are of major import: the Lemurian, Atlantean, and the Aryan so far. So each time we have a root race, a big root race, we have a kind of a large incarnation of humanity. And when we, the sub-races are lesser incarnations, and the branch races and the family races, the Theosophists have divided that all up. But the branch races, sub-races are there, and the branch races are there. With the sub-race, however, we do have a lesser incarnation of humanity as a whole. With branch races, it's not entirely all of humanity, and certainly not with the family races. So we have to look at humanity's incarnations in a different way, a larger way. And these incarnations are indeed ruled by different rays, and maybe by different astrological signs. He hasn't, what he's given us is some rather small uh, durations where humanity is having a kind of a minor incarnation within the larger root race. We're still very much in the Aryan root race, and the coming age of Aquarius, which is the shorter age of Aquarius, will still be in the Aryan root race. So that's the larger incarnation. And one of the smaller units has its own astrology and its own reality, and we've just been shown Soul 2, Personality 5, Mind, Intuitive 4, the Aspiration and Incentive, Ray 6 Astral, and a much stronger and more resilient and more fit and more healthy physical body under Ray 7 for all of humanity, encouraged by the 7th ray cycle, which is occurring at the same time as the Aquarian Age. Now, we don't know whether that 7th ray operates all the way through a 25,000-year period, or whether, let's say, the 6th ray has operated through the outgoing 25,000-year Platonic year ruled by Pisces. We know that the recent Little Piscean Age had the 6th ray accompaniment. We know that the coming shorter Aquarian Age will have the 7th ray accompaniment, but we don't know about the accompanying ray cycle for the great Platonic years, ruled respectively by Pisces and Aquarius, although, the analogy is certainly there. So basically, he's asking us, the main point here is distinguish between the major and minor incarnations of humanity as a whole. That's what he's asking us to do. And any factor that lasts 10 million years, and Lemuria lasted much longer than that, the Atlantean period maybe 12 million years or 11 million years, the Aryan race shorter, and the coming 6th root race 10 million years, somewhere he gives that figure. Those are the really, really big periods, and even within them, many Platonic cycles can be found. The 25,000-year cycles can be found and look lesser than the great incarnations through the root races. Okay. I think, let's see what the next one looks like. Well, maybe we can read it, and then as a stretch over, we'll start there next time. Each race produces its own type of dweller on the threshold, who was faced at the close of the spiritual cycle, not the physical, which goes on to crystallization. Each race was faced at the close of the spiritual cycle when maturity was achieved and a certain initiation became possible for its advanced humanity. So that's when the dweller was produced, that is emblematic of each one of the races. And we can imagine, when we think back upon the massive type of humanity that existed in Lemuria and the giants of Atlantis, and the difference between physical polarization, astral polarization, and now we're heading into mental focus and polarization, very different dwellers. I mean, in a way, we're not having a intelligence dweller in normal Atlantean, the normal Atlantean populace. And if we have the third and the fifth ray operative in Lemuria, they are on a much lower level and do not have to do with the high development of human intelligence. So we'll go on to this next time. And what I'll do here is just, transfer it down, because we're not making a whole lot of progress in terms of pages, but these are deep subjects, okay? So basically we're going to page 157, I think. So this would be the end of program 154. And our date here is the 14th of August. And our reading number 94. And what is it? Page 157, I think. Is that it?
157 is correct.
Okay, thanks, Michael. And we'll work with this on the 21st. And it'll be an evening reading. And it'll be program 155 and reading 95. And we'll start at page 157. Well, think of it. Here is DK giving us the rays of the Piscean Age and the coming rays of the Aquarian Age. And so in terms of our history and in terms of our anticipated future, he's outlining the energies that we will have to work with. Whatever our ray may be, our soul ray may be this or that, but in general, because we are members of humanity, we will be working under those rays. And, he also tells us, probably in the Destiny of the Nations, that if we are a sixth ray monad, we're going to have trouble in the seventh ray age, and the other monadic rays will not have difficulty. So, they can understand a divine plan on the basis of the incoming and outgoing energies. And while we cannot understand as they understand, we can get an idea of the structure and what to expect and what the dangers are with the overemphasis of any particular energy, and what the potentials are. And that maybe is that's the good part. We can fulfill the following potentials and look forward to the elevation of humanity along certain ray lines. Okay, so that's it for the reading of this section, contrasting the rays of those two ages and looking at the incarnations of the human race, the major and minor incarnations. And, we've had that too. Some of our incarnations very ordinary and without much progress and without much building into the causal body. And some of our incarnations very eventful. And we might almost say more and more eventful as we approach the end of the age, when the dweller really shows up, and our own dweller too, just as we're about to make some advancement. I mean, look, humanity's taking the first initiation now with the reappearance of the Christ. When he reappears, it will indicate that a sufficient number of human beings has taken the first initiation to say that humanity has taken the first initiation. And our dweller issues right now are tremendous. Maybe for each one of us individually, but certainly for the human race as a whole. We are really facing it. And the whole First and Second World War were a tremendous dweller issue, which was a continuation of the battle in Atlantis, when, as we're told, Arjuna was confused, but he's not confused anymore. Arjuna, the world disciple, didn't really know what he should do, who he should honor, which part of his family should be emphasized. He didn't know. But now, the Tibetan says, he does know. Now we're fighting it out under Scorpio, and Arjuna knows. And in the old days, we were fighting it out under Libra, and Arjuna was uncertain. Okay, so are there any thoughts or questions you would like to state, write, address, whatever?
Michael.
Yes, Michael.
Earlier, Kim asked, what do you mean if we live in a camp? And I believe that you were referring to
Armed camp.
living in an armed camp.
Correct. Armed camp. In other words, every nation is, up to its teeth in weaponry, and the weaponry is very destructive, and an accident could happen easily. And that is among the more chilling of the things that DK has said. We'd have to start all over again. Humanity would be mostly destroyed or destroyed, and they would have to see whether a humanity could not be raised up, which would fulfill the intentions of the divine plan. I think that first appeared in the introduction of Problems of Humanity. My friend Brett Mitchell, who's a student of these things, he alerted me to it. Then I also found it in Externalization of the Hierarchy, the very same thing, when I was doing the recording for that. The same material was there, that we have to disarm. And that takes us to the 4 freedoms of Roosevelt. The freedom from fear. What is it? Freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear, which has to do with the possibility of being invaded, of having war come to our country, of losing everything. We have to reduce our armaments. So there are Black Lodge tendencies, materialistic tendencies now that want to increase the armaments, and they are definitely working on behalf of the lords of materialism. I've been reading about, all of Russia's new weaponry. They seem to be really concentrating on it. And the power of the weapons, if they are telling the truth, um, it seems to be truly frightening and much more advanced than the destructive possibilities that we have had. It's almost like you press a button and the weapon is there at your doorstep. That's how fast these things are, apparently. So that's what the armed camp is, that it would be lead to even an accidental explosion, which would basically destroy humanity. But
Would you go ahead?
the cheerful part, okay, which is one thing. I'm sorry, Michael, is that Foster Bailey, he was an initiate, and he was going to be occupying the same role in Master Moria's ashram as Alice Bailey in KH's ashram. And he said in one of his books in the early 50s that the Tibetan had assured him, now, you take it with a grain of salt, or maybe he just knew how to contact the Tibetan because the Tibetan had said, some of you know how. The Tibetan had assured him that there would not be that third war. And that was a little bit after he was writing. Okay. So he was writing in the late 40s dire things. But Foster Bailey said, was it in Running God's Plan or Changing Esoteric Values, one of his books there, that the Tibetan had assured him now that there would not be such a war. So if one wants to be hopeful, there is that to consider. Okay, but Michael, go ahead, please.
Okay. For everyone, would you repeat the four freedoms that Roosevelt put forward?
I'm always forgetting one, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. So the first two are positive. You free speech, basically, um, we must have that positive type of expression. Free worship, we must have that positive expression. Then come the two negatives. We must not have want, starvation, economic misery. We must not have fear, freedom from fear. So, they are listed, and it was said to be it's in the books, and maybe it's externalization, I suppose. You can find it on the CD-ROM very easily. And also the Atlantic Charter is part of that. Apparently Roosevelt and Churchill, two high disciples, met on the high seas, somewhere in between, and worked some things out together for the future of humanity. And basically, DK said, this is as much of shambolic purpose as the average individual can understand. So it's a very simple statement, these four freedoms, but at the same time, well, makes me want to go there. So let's see, four freedoms, and there are several, and if I can get there fast. And here's 8 points of the Atlantic Charter. Also a shambolic statement. And here we go. Externalization. And here's Franklin Roosevelt, a first-rate disciple, and from the way the Tibetan speaks, it seems like a first-rate disciple who was even a little bit higher than Churchill in this. In the future days, which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon 4 essential human freedoms. The first is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy, peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor, anywhere in the world. Franklin D. Roosevelt. There it is, a few short lines, a major shambolic statement, the 4 freedoms. And yeah, well, and then the Atlantic Charter coming before that. One is August 14th and January 6th. Okay, well, it looks like the 4 freedoms came first and the Atlantic Charter maybe elaborated on that. Or I think that's, we'll have to research that. But they are basically very important points. And you know what's interesting about this? Think of it. There's a 4 and an 8, aren't there? I would ask you to study carefully the 8 points outlined on the high seas and the 4 freedoms so often discussed throughout the world. Let quietness and depth characterize your inner life. Look at what the Buddha did. The 4 noble truths and the noble eightfold path. 4 and 8 again. And here are 4 and 8 later. And also, important shambolic statements for the welfare of humanity. We can say that there's a difference maybe in ray, but they both, the Buddha carries the general teaching ray. It's a very second ray presentation. And these others are shambolic statements. They carry the first ray mostly. So here you are on page 318, 319 in externalization of the hierarchy. And yeah, that's where you are. And it goes into the background of it a little bit. So it was a major coming together, in a way. Even after this, it looked like the forces of light would go down to defeat, because these were created apparently in 1941, and the big crisis came at the end of 1942. But it set up some kind of thought form which had a very powerful shambolic effect and probably rallied many onto the side of good and into a more intense expression of the good. So we're very fortunate. You know, when you look around today and you wonder how would certain world leaders today handle an emerging Hitler or Mussolini? These two handled it. Today, it might be a hopeless disaster because there's been such a selfish degeneration in the quality of leadership. But we have to expect that more or less when pralaya is upon us. The pralaya of the Piscean age is upon us, and things do fall apart. You know, there is a withering of the law and an uprising of lawlessness on all sides. And then it is that the bodhisattva has to manifest himself from age to age for the uh, edification, what is the word, you know, of those who do good, the salvation of those who do good, and the destruction of such as do evil. That we're in that period now. Okay.
It's interesting to me that there's a cosmic law of freedom that exercises certain limitations on what freedoms are. For instance, for us, we have the freedom of speech. However, you don't yell fire in a crowded cinema.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's true. And you don't when it comes to freedom, you're not allowed to always save people from themselves and thereby prevent the educative law of karma from operating. So there's a sense in which even if someone's going to do something really wrong, you cannot force their will to do it right. That is a big one in, you know, in the Syrian law of freedom. You cannot compel the good. You can educate around it. You know, you can invite, encourage, you can do everything else, but you can't make a person do the good, because then you would be grabbing a hold of their will, and you're not allowed to violate their will. What was that, John Marshall or something about yelling fire in an overcrowded theater or something like that? He was a justice of the, what's he, a Supreme Court major justice? Uh, it's come down from the 19th century, I think, that idea of you cannot yell fire in an overcrowded theater or cinema. We'll have to look that up, where that comes from. But yes, there are limitations. And if you violate the members of the White Lodge or the Lords of the Shining Countenance, whatever, they're not allowed to take aim at the will of another. And that's exactly what the Lords of Materialism do. They take aim at the will, and they force the will. They enslave the will of another. If you think about the whole slavery thing, I mean, maybe some of you saw the movie, was it Amistad? It was a Steven Spielberg movie. It was about slavery. In it, Albert Finney played the role of a man who became a janitor in a church. He had been a outrageous slaver, and he wrote the song "Amazing Grace." And there were, this was all England, you know, and there was a man by the name of William Wilberforce who was instrumental in ending the slave movement in Britain. And I don't know if the movie was called Amistad or Amazing Grace or something like that. I'm not sure. But it really played into the hands of the enslaving lords of materialism. That's what they want to do, enslave humanity. So it was a dreadful period, and it's happening again. People are being enslaved again, not only economically, but actually being retained and kept, so they cannot have even freedom of movement. They just have to serve for nothing. They're masters. When people are moving to Saudi Arabia, from the Philippines and other places to become domestic servants, their fate is often terrible, and they are executed for things that are hardly anything. They are looked at as an underclass. They are enslaved. It's going on today. So we have to really apply the Syrian law of freedom there. And that the Lords of Liberation, the Lord of Liberation who is connected with freedom, is the very first emergence. Liberty, equality, fraternity. Liberty is first. Okay.
And Kim asks, do you think what is going on at the moment in terms of governments locking us down is connected with what you are talking about? And this question came in before you got into the
Okay.
slavery issue.
Well, this is the denial of the temporary denial of customary freedoms for the sake of the whole in a very dangerous situation which could kill millions of people and basically destroy the economic gains of humanity. So this is one of the prices of freedom. The locking down is meant to create the freedom of life and uh, healthy expression and the possibility of human advancement. The failure to lock down could wipe out a great portion of humanity. So, we have to sacrifice sometimes the lesser freedoms in order to achieve the greater. And then, of course, our whole sense of values will be adjusted, because it's a battle, again, between the second ray and the third ray, between humanitarianism of the second ray and the economic gain which feeds desire of the third ray. And, people are becoming intolerant when they have to sacrifice the lesser freedoms for the greater. So, yes, I think that this issue of to lock down, not to lock down, it's tied in with the whole idea of what is freedom for, what is real freedom, what is a greater freedom and a lesser freedom, what is freedom and what is license. What is license? And okay, I'm staring at the heavens there, so I'm not going to worry about it. But freedom and license are not the same. When people, they defy the social distancing, they they pack in together. They don't notify. They don't get tested. They don't quarantine. They go to the bars and, congregate in the same old way in a state of denial. That is not about freedom. That's about license, if I can call it that. Yeah. Okay.
And there are no hands raised and no other questions in the chat box at this time.
Okay. Well, let's get on with our meditation. I'm going to try to get rid of that. Okay. Let's do our meditation. We're going to deal with the manipulation today. So often when rays 1 and 3 are combined and ray 2 is missing, we have some very difficult glamour situations. Now, I can ask again, Tuya, if you would like to do that. Devious and constant manipulation. We have, learned in the United States, which seems to be, generating more good old Atlantean glamour than any place in the world, that there's an attack upon the postal system. We have learned that there's an attempt to make the delivery of mail-in ballots very difficult or even impossible in places in order to enhance voter suppression. It's a clear, selfish, criminal manipulation. And I thought, well, this is a pervasive kind of glamour. People in power, if they don't have sufficient love energy, they will manipulate everybody to gain their ends. That's what's happening. And so I thought we could meditate on this third ray glamour. So I don't know, Tuya, do you want to do that or
No, you
not?
can do that.
Okay, all right. Well, I have more third ray. I probably deserve it. All right. Here we go. And I'm just going to see whether it's possible to appear or not appear. Yes, it is possible. One doesn't just have to look at the heavens. So here we are. And we just get ready as a group to work together. And since the lords of materialism try to control humanity through glamour, they don't take kindly to those who are trying to help humanity be rid of it. So we have to be wise and protect ourselves. Protect the instrument so we can use it. And so that means the protective formula, and we'll be making the cross of light as we brow, heart, left eye, right eye, this cross of divinity, tracing the light. With 3 fingers, no, that's not, what is it? Represents the Trinity. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And as each of us traces our individual cross of protection, the group effectively creates a greater cross for the entire group. Cross of divinity, in this case, a long-armed cross. There's so much sixth ray in the work of the glamour that the sixth ray cross is operative. Then we focus the light. We first focus the dual light of matter, etheric, physical, and mind, lower mind. The vital light of matter and the rational light of lower mind, we bring them together. On the plane of lower mind, we can think with vitality. And we reach imaginatively toward the soul light. We see if we can contact and recognize soul light. And we bring the soul light down to join the other two lights. And then have a triple light from which our beam of light will be generated. Soul, mind, and matter. And then we say together, followed by the sacred word, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So we use our triple light to, in a way, contact the greater light of the intuition, which must eventually be working through the astral body. And then we utilize the formula. And we say together, visualizing the great searchlight that we are creating turned upon the astral plane. So as we use the formula, we visualize that group beam, which is destructive, can be used for destruction, and can be used for detection, detecting the glamour that must be destroyed. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And our beam is touching, penetrating the astral plane and finding the glamour we are seeking to dissipate. Feel the power of the beam as the spiritual will is invoked, strengthening the beam. And we say regarding the spiritual will, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. Now, we're going to get into the words of power, but first let us think about devious and constant manipulation. Remember, the destroyer of souls, the deluder of souls, and the manipulator of souls. We have that third ray to deal with, the personality, materialistic personality ray we've been talking about. So what has happened to humanity, within humanity, as a result of this devious and constant manipulation? And, you know, in general, the Lodge of Materialism controls the man from the outside in. They do not make appeal to the inner living essence. They manipulate from without to within so that the arrangements of events that they seek will occur. And in the world today, there's so much of this. Maybe we locate that in our mind's eye. And now we will use these words of power. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of devious and constant manipulation. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. the power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. And so this beam is directed how you wish to direct it in your imagination, producing the weakening and the dissipation of this glamour of devious and constant manipulation. We will take 5 minutes and in the silence and with intensity of purpose, we will work and we'll see the work proceeding positively according to this to these words of power. And then we refocus ourselves, withdrawing our beam back to the mental plane, turning our attention away from the astral plane, and we shut off this searchlight, and we return the light to the appropriate places. And maybe we can see humanity functioning more straightforwardly, more honestly, and encouraging the emergence of the true inner human being according to the free choice of that inner human being, and not engineering some outer condition through manipulation. So let us sound the Om 3 times and affirm that some work has been done in clarifying the personality situation for humanity, and especially the astral glamorous situation. So let us hope that increasingly human beings learn to be above board with each other and to respect the inner will of each, so that one does not simply try to package another person in the mode one wishes according to low desire. And let's be watchful for the manipulations as they occur, and use the strength of the group, even if just in a moment, to help dissipate that tendency. Okay, friends, thank you very much for your participation tonight. We'll have our Zoom meeting for the at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. GMT, for the Cosmic Fire in depth. We're working on the fires of matter, latent fire and radiatory fire, and one of the very first things to be mastered in the new dispensation. So it gives us the outline that we need, and the way to proceed as we work eventually towards the solar fire, which the main part of the book focuses on solar fire. And then we will continue with the morning meditation on Saturday, the Soul of Nations, and then attracting financial resources on Sunday in the morning. And we'll be notifying you about the Esoteric United Nations meeting. The new moon is going to be a big day for us. We'll be working with Shambhala energies, I think in one meditation. Well, you can't really, I mean, you can open yourself to divine purpose is what you can do. And we'll be working to evoke the soul of nations, and we'll see about the other scheduled programs, whether we will continue with those or not on that particular day. We don't want to overload. So thank you. And from all of us on the communications team, we wish you the very best, and may the great teaching be absorbed and applied. This will be on Makara pretty soon, and gradually on YouTube. You can let your friends know they can listen in and participate if they would like to. So, bye for now.